Hello music fans, welcome back to the Death by Unicorn channel for another installment of What's New 2022. I didn't do one last week, so I'm going to talk about albums that came out over the last 2 weeks from May 20th and May 13th. And I'm going to talk about 6 albums that I listened to that I enjoyed. 5 of them are progressive metal, so that's the big theme today, and it's a pretty common theme on my channel to talk about progressive metal albums. One of them is just more of a hard rock album, and I'll talk about them in my order of preference so far, and this is just first impressions. I'm not doing in-depth album reviews or track by track, because I've only listened to these each once or twice so far, and I want to kick it off with one that I really enjoyed, which was Evergrey and their album A Heartless Portrait. This is progressive power metal, and it's their 13th album. Maybe not quite as good as their 12th album on first impression, but pretty close. If I recall correctly, this one isn't as progressive as their last one, but I find the vocal melodies and hooks are so catchy on this newer one, and the guitar solos are great as well. If you're a fan of Dream Theater, Symphony X, Ayreon, Stradivarius, imagine that kind of sound blended together, and you'll probably be a fan of Evergrey as well. The second one I'm going to talk about is from a band called 0 Hour, and the album's called Agenda 21. This is progressive metal as well, and in terms of how good this is or quality level, for me it's about on par in quality with the release from the Chinese progressive metal band O earlier this month, but it's a very different style of progressive metal. Whereas O is more rhythmic and ethereal vocals, this is more guitar leads and has some moments with heavier vocals as well, like the odd scream, still mostly clean singing. For fans of Protest the Hero, Cynic, Nevermore, and Voivod, I say Nevermore because it's got a bit of that like power metal vocal vibe to it as well. Voivod because it's got a bit of quirkiness to it, this 0 Hour. And Protest the Hero for the fast guitar parts. And Cynic I mentioned because it's also got a bit of this like ambience and spaciness to it. So a pretty cool album from 0 Hour. This is their 7th album. I haven't heard any of their other work, but now I'm pretty curious about what their other stuff sounds like. And my third favorite over the past 2 weeks would be Moontooth with their album Phototroph. And this is progressive metal with hard rock and stoner rock vibes. And this is really solid prog metal, but of course I've heard a lot of great prog metal this year, so probably unlikely that this will crack my top 40, but this is, if you're a fan of Mastodon, their guitar sound is similar to Mastodon. Vocally, it reminds me a little bit of the Intervals album that has vocals, so if you like that, you might like this. Or if you're also a fan of Baroness, the band Baroness, maybe it would sound a bit like that. So yeah, check it out if you like those bands. And fourth album that I'm going to talk about is from a band called Nova Luna, and the album's called Nova Vita. And this is progressive metal. It's their debut album. They're an Italian melodic progressive metal band, and really solid work for a debut. I'm excited to hear what they can do next. They sing in English, but you can hear the accents in their voices. And something about the phrasing of the vocal melodies and the vocal timbre of the clean singing really reminds me of big choruses from Modern In Flames album. I think that's why they consider themselves melodic progressive metal, because it has a little bit of this melodic death metal vibe to it. Still really heavy emphasis on clean singing, not really on screaming. For fans of In Flames and Soilwork, but imagine combining that, In Flames and Soilwork meets Dream Theater and Symphony X, and that's kind of the sound here of Nova Luna. And fifth, I'm going to talk about a solo album from James Labrie called Beautiful Shade of Grey. And this is his 4th solo album. I'd say it's progressive metal. He could still pull off really great vocals on studio albums, and even though from when I've seen him live, I've heard him struggling a lot live vocally with Dream Theater, but he still puts on a really good display of vocal power in the studio. The music here is nice as well. Imagine kind of a more heavily acoustic Dream Theater album, but there are some electric parts too. I probably won't return to it too much, and it likely won't make my top 40 of the year, but it was nice when it was on for me. And if you're a fan of Dream Theater, imagine like Dream Theater meets Yes with like all of the kind of acoustic instruments, meets like Led Zeppelin. They do a Led Zeppelin cover on this album, which is pretty cool. Ramble On. And lastly, I'm going to talk about the only non-progressive metal album that I'm talking about today, which is just a hard rock album from the Black Keys called Dropout Boogie. It's hard garage rock with some blues and indie influences. This is a pretty solid bluesy hard rock album, but it is also pretty kind of standard and safe sounding. It's not really a standout or any innovation, but something if you're into that kind of music that you'll probably enjoy. And that's it for today for What's New 2022. Probably in another week or two I'll have another video like this, and I'll talk about some new albums that I heard and give my first impressions. Until next time, peace out.